I'm joined this morning by President and CEO of the Commonwealth Foundation, Charles Mitchell. Charles, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Great to be with you as always, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So take me through your latest piece talking about Josh Shapiro. And he has teenage kids and college age kids. I know he's trying to be cool on the internet, releasing a lot of new videos. But in this one, you're calling him out for his claim of being moderate.
Yeah, well, it's very simple. He says it a lot. He needs to do it. As you know, Dawn, I run an organization that's about public policy. We're about actually getting things done for the people of Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro made some wonderful campaign promises. You know what happens with campaign promises. Politicians are quick to make them and slow to keep them. And one of the most important promises he made was to deliver $10,000 scholarships for many of the people whose children can hear my voice right now. It would benefit no area more than your listening area, which is why I'm so happy to talk with you about it. Governor Shapiro needs to get that done. He failed to get it done last year. There's a whole story behind that. You and I talked about it at the time, and the reason I wrote that piece that you're referring to is to encourage him to do it. It isn't enough to just get the headlines and say these moderate things, which, by the way, got him elected. The people of Pennsylvania sent him to Harrisburg to actually do the job.
Amen. And as we think about, right now, TikTok, we're heading toward they're negotiating within the budget, obviously by June 30th, July 1st. We start the new fiscal year, and so they're up against the deadline. We're seeing a bit of a repeat. It's a little deja vu here. Do you think that we'll see? Anything play out differently from the last time that he did that line item veto, especially in the shadow of November 5th?
Well, I think there's a few things we're in the shadow of. November 5th is one of them. Another one is a rapper. Jay-Z came out in favor of the Lifeline scholarships that Governor Shapiro promised to do and didn't get done last year. And there's Senator Tony Williams, who many of his constituents are in your listening area, Southwest Philadelphia, Delaware County, and my homeland. There are bipartisan and transpartisan voices who have joined the chorus for this since last year. So I think we're in the shadow of all of those things. And yes, of course, I hope Governor Shapiro keeps his promise. I think the people who have the most to say about that, frankly, is not me, although I'm happy you asked me, but actually your listeners. And I would encourage anybody who can hear my voice right now, go to lifelinescholarships.com. You can send a message to your state lawmakers asking them to get this done. And I'll tell you one alarming fact on, I'm in Harrisburg right now. Our state legislature isn't. In my business, if I had a deadline on June 30th, I'd be working right now. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're not working with Governor Shapiro to get this done. I think people need to have a sense of urgency, and so therefore I would really encourage your listeners, go on that website, lifelinescholarships.com, send a message to your lawmakers and to Governor Shapiro saying, get this done now.
Now, do you mean that they're not working because it's Juneteenth, because it's a federal state holiday?
No. The whole week. They're out of session all week. It's very odd to me.
Yeah, that's...
now, they're back next week, but June 30th is a week from Sunday. You can read a calendar just as well as I can. They need to work. And that's part of what I said in my article, and I don't like saying it, but it happens to be true, is... There's a track record here, whether it's on the education issue, whether it's energy, there's other issues we can talk about, the encampment at Penn. Governor Shapiro has a record of saying things that sound good, and particularly sound good to his future political ambitions, which I think have a lot to do with where he thinks the votes are. And I think he's right about this, by the way. In the Democratic Party, nationally, they're in the middle. That's why we have Joe Biden today. What he's doing is saying a lot to make those people feel good, but not actually doing the work. And we need the work to be done.
Well, you start out I think your latest op-ed that you talk about the fact that, our governor is a moderate president in the making, that he does. There's no question. I've known, we've talked about this. I've known Josh Shapiro since his days in Abington with a great mentor who we share, Lou Klein, the great late Lou Klein, who, of course, the Temple Communication School is named after. And Lou Klein used to say that. This was 20 plus years ago. He's going to be president someday. So I have no doubt that Josh Shapiro absolutely has his eye on the White House. But I would ask you after, you mentioned Jay-Z, also Meek Mill, others coming out. We know behind the scenes, Charles, that the truth is these Lifeline scholarships absolutely could get the vote and the bipartisan support. They have the support, but this is all about November 5th. It's also, to your point, about running for president and having the teachers union leadership. But does Jay-Z, does a Meek Mill, does that, the reports that the GOP and Trump may have the greatest support of the African-American community because of issues like this, does that alter where we're going here prior to June 30th?
Listen, politicians are politicians, and I might get myself in trouble with some of your listeners by saying this, but, Governor Shapiro, if you're listening, I'm going to give you some free political advice. Everybody in Abington, everybody who's known you, says the same thing. They say what Dawn just said. Okay, you wanted to be president since you were knee high. Got it. Fine. I am neutral on that question. I run a policy organization, but if you want to be president and you can read the polls just as well as I can, do school choice and do it now. Yeah. Deliver $300 million in scholarships, particularly for people in West Philly and North Philly and Pittsburgh and Wilkes-Barre and Erie, because, not only are the votes, generally speaking, in the Democratic Party in the primary, which, of course, is the first race you need to win, they're in the middle, and 70 to 80% of Democrats, depending on which poll you want to read, support this. But certainly, yes, to your point, when you look at November 5th, where you look at where President Biden is doing poorly, his numbers in the black community are just mind-boggling compared to any other Democrat ever. And, that's not my job. My job is to deliver scholarships for children. But again, Governor Shapiro, you want to be president? Well, then you got to reverse that slide that your party has encountered in those communities. And this is what they want. Now, as you know, Dawn, there is another issue in my article that is also relevant to this, which is energy. I mean, the people, especially people with less means, people in urban communities, whatever, they're getting hammered with inflation. They're getting hammered with food costs, and they're getting hammered with energy costs. And we're talking during a week right now where it's almost 100 degrees. The air conditioning in my office isn't working very well. So people are going to have huge bills this month for their air conditioning, right? And these energy mandates that Governor Shapiro is pursuing after saying during the campaign that he wasn't going to do it, they're going to hammer people who have the least ability to pay. And to your point earlier, what do these two issues have in common? He's caught between the electorate, whether you want to talk about the Democratic primary electorate, the black vote, whatever, just the electorate in general, and the moneyed interests in the Democratic Party. And it's hilarious to me because, I'm frightened so hard for these scholarships, and there are all these accusations that people make, and, they say I work for rich people. You know what? Yeah, I do. I work for some really generous people who give money away so that kids can have hope in West Philly and North Philly. Yeah. Okay. But you know who really is captive to moneyed interest? Any Democrat politician, and we have a lot of them in Pennsylvania, who doesn't vote for these scholarships because they're working for Randy Weingarten and for the heads of the teachers unions in Washington, D.C. That's the moneyed interest, actually, that's dominating our politics. And that's I think what you're saying is the question is, are you with the voters? Are you with the kids who are hurting? Are you with the people whose air conditioners are cranking this week? Or are you in thrall to a really, 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 really small minority of really, really, really rich people, mostly in Washington, D.C., not even in Pennsylvania, who control much of the Democratic Party? That's the choice that Governor Shapiro has to make. And I get it. It's a hard choice. but it's very clear where the voters are, and I hope he sides with the voters.
Yeah, me too. Charles, you talked about energy, so I wanted to get into this, and not just for Pennsylvania, the jobs here, that's an issue with the unions, but just looking at, I'm a PECO customer. I live in Philadelphia, as you know, longtime Philadelphia resident. Electricity prices, and this is the average energy prices, Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington. This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a government website. Anybody can look this up. Electricity prices here in Philadelphia, where I'm broadcasting from, 17% higher than anybody else in the entire nation. And then you look at the gas prices, the high gas prices, and you do the math. Oh, my goodness. It's crazy amid a heat wave, as it feels like it's 100 today, and that's really not letting up for the next week. So this is something that I think every person, especially in Philadelphia, when you look at these high rates going on, it's outrageous.
It is. And what's worse, it's bad right now, but Governor Shapiro is in court trying to make it worse after saying he would do the opposite. He campaigned, especially when he was in front of trade unions who, like you said, benefit from the jobs in energy production and pipelines and all the rest of it. And he badmouthed essentially a version of the Green New Deal that Governor Wolf, his predecessor, tried to put Pennsylvania into, and our legislature did the right thing and fought him and actually took him to court over it. And Governor Shapiro essentially said a lot of the right things during the campaign about how this plan, which if you or your listeners ever hear it, it's RGGI, and they call it in government land Reggie. Sounds like, your friend, somebody you can talk to. No, Reggie is not your friend. Okay. Reggie means all those costs this is what it means in plain English, Sean. All those costs that you just talked about that people are already getting whacked by on their PECO bills or whatever, add 30%. That's what this would do. He is in court right now fighting to uphold that. The legislature won in court, and Governor Shapiro quietly on a Friday afternoon, anything a politician does on a Friday afternoon, you're not going to like. He appealed the ruling, and he had some garbled up mumbo jumbo as to why he did it. And why am I telling you that? Because that's the point, is it is bad.
Yeah.
Energy costs are bad. Electricity costs are bad. He said he was going to make it better, just like he said he was going to make education better. As of now, his actual record is making it worse, and he needs to stop.
I'll tell you this, within the last year, I had relatives who live in Montgomery County who told me that the public schools are cutting funding for special needs students, that was the plan, and schools were hearing about it, et cetera. And I mentioned it in passing on the air, and then I was beat up on social media for saying, how could you say that? That's a lie. And quite frankly, in the Commonwealth Foundation, and you, Rachel Langan on the Delaware Valley Journal, that's where it was originally published, that you have published on your site, the CommonwealthFoundation.org, a headline that says just that. Democrats want to cut funding for Pennsylvania special needs students. I just wanted to touch on that because this is something where, we will hear something or get the news from sources, or even for me, from family members. I'll say it or put it out on social media, Charles, and boom, they'll just try to shut me down and say, that's fake news. Shame on you for putting that out there. And I just want to focus on that for a moment, thinking about the fact that even when we try to educate people on, hey, this is a proposal, this is really happening, what happens is it's called fake news. The information is shut down so that voters, in truth, they can't even make a well-educated decision sometimes because the media, because of bias, and omission, bias by omission, as I call it, doesn't report it. It's a huge problem that I have seen for years.
Yeah, it is a huge problem, and I wish I could just eliminate it.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do at least, is do what I can about it. And here's what I think I can offer to you and your listeners is this. The one thing that's unique about Commonwealth Foundation compared to any other institution, including the media and everybody else, is everything that we say and do is based on facts and numbers, and you can see them yourself. So if there's any of your listeners who aren't familiar with our work, like you said, our website's commonwealthfoundation.org. And my colleagues, they don't always get to do fun stuff like go on radio with you, but what they do is they take the actual numbers, the only honest numbers about how your government is spending your money, your money, not their money, your money, and then analyze it and tell the truth. And there's always a link on there to the actual charts, the actual numbers, and you can review them for yourself. That's one of my annoyances about the media is, and I say the media, I don't mean you, obviously, the rest of them. Some of these publications that shade the truth is they often don't show their work. They make it very hard to verify whether what they're saying is true, whether it's a vote, whether it's numbers. Well, we have the opposite philosophy at Commonwealth Foundation because we think any of these discussions need to be based on truth, and there's never more lies out there, if you ask me, than in the education discussion, and that's why we've made such an investment, thanks to our generous donors, to put this information out there. And specifically what you're asking about, or what you mentioned earlier with my colleague Rachel, who lives in Westchester and did a great article for the Delaware Valley Journal, is that despite all the talk from Democrats about how they fight for the poor, and when President Biden went to Girard College recently, he was talking about how we're the champions for the black community. Well, guess what? The bill that the Delaware Valley Journal reported on, which Governor Shapiro included in his budget address, and which the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives passed on party lines, would gut funding for the very schools that disproportionately educate children with special needs, children who are bullied, and children of color. Those are just statistics, and those are called cyber charter schools. And increasingly, there are churches in Pennsylvania that are partnering up with schools like that to educate the most vulnerable children, whether it's children in urban areas, whether it's children who get bullied and can't go to school because they're afraid. Those are the ones that are getting threatened with having their money taken away. It's shameful. And, oh, by the way, getting back to what you said earlier about November 5th, you wonder why the more things like that happen, there are some changes in the way that those communities are saying that they're going to vote. Again, I'm not a politician. I don't have an axe to grind here. I'm just telling you facts. If there's a group of people who say when they go to Girard College, we're for you, we're championing you, and then when it comes time to give you a $10,000 scholarship, they're nowhere to be found. And then when it comes time for funding to be approved for the school or the church or whatever that is actually saving your kids, and they say, I think we should cut it. No wonder voters are getting upset. Don't blame them.
Yeah, because I think thanks to your point, because of people like Meek Mill and Jay-Z, who, by the way, they've donated their own money to help with private, scholarships because they realize the importance of it. But I do think that people are starting to get around thanks to these people, I guess unlikely sources or common sense sources that they're starting to learn about it and say, what? This is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, Dawn, it cracks me up. I just love watching these attacks on Jay-Z and Meek Mill. People are saying, they're rich and let me explain how this works. Okay. Those guys, and listen, it won't shock you to know, I am a boring dad of 4. Okay. I do not listen to Jay-Z. Okay. I don't listen to rap. I listen to bluegrass. Okay. But I know this, the reason he's rich is because people voluntarily parted with their money because they liked his art. Okay. That's America, okay?
Yes.
And he got all that money, which he earned because people loved what he did, and then he gave it away. And we're supposed to hate him, but we're supposed to like Randy Weingarten, the teacher union boss, who is also rich, but she's rich because she took money out of teachers' paychecks, whether they wanted to or not, and has been taken to court in probably every state in America by teachers who don't want to give her the money. And she doesn't give the money away to scholarships. we're supposed to listen to her and be mad at Meek Mill and Jay-Z because they're rich. Like, that is such a fallacious argument. I think it just shows you. And look, whether it happens by November 5th or by June 30th or whatever, I can't tell you, but I think I can tell you. The complexion of our country and the complexion of these issues and people's awareness of what's really going on is changing.
Yes.
And it's a good thing.
We'll end it there. Thank you so much. You're exactly right. President and CEO of the Commonwealth Foundation, Charles Mitchell. Thank you so much. And until next time, thanks, Charles.
Thanks so much, Dawn. See ya.